Alrighty, so we're back in here, back in the studio, and we don't even know what to call this segment. But basically, in a sense, it's us. We've gotten a whole bunch of questions in from a bunch of people from online on Instagram. Emile Steenveld, that's how you can find him online on Facebook and Instagram. __ Ben James _ on Instagram, and Ben Kelly on Facebook. All the Ben Jameses were taken, but yeah, we don't know what to call this yet. It's probably questions with friends or questions with.
Basically we got a bunch of questions sent in, and I think this is what we're also going to do to include everybody in this is sending questions, and basically if it fits or if it's interesting, let's talk about it.
Yeah, it also just helps us out as well.
Yeah.
So we don't have to be perpetually trying to work out what to be able to talk about, because sometimes literally we're just super boring. And when I say we, I mean...
He's speaking for himself.
I'm never boring. But anyway, so we've got some questions in here, and we're eventually going to get around to them as the weeks go by. But so we've got a couple, and we've got one here. The first one is from Ice Castillo, and it says, how to focus on one thing. Right? Do you think that's something that, especially right now with quarantine, people are probably having a really, really tough time, even though they've got all the time in the world. Well, some people do, more than they usually would, that they may be struggling to hone in.
Where do we go with this?
Yeah.
So many things come to mind. Ice, cool name, by the way.
Yeah.
What's interesting is because I was always told in school, Emile is a lovely student. However, is easily distracted. So I'm definitely the kind of person that needs to learn how to focus, and I need structure. And if I don't, then literally my attention goes anywhere and everywhere. So what I do personally, I have to have a plan, and I kind of have to be like, okay, when I wake up in the morning, I have to literally think about my day. What do I want to achieve by the end of the day? And when I think about what I need to achieve by the end of the day, then it gives me a plan to go, okay, what are the most important things right now? What are my priorities? If I was to look back at the end of the day, what would I be happy with that I achieved?
So it takes a little bit of organization first and foremost.
Yeah. And this is the thing. I used to hate organization. I used to hate structure. A really good exercise to do is write down what are your distractions. And the moment I write down my distractions, and I know we all know our distractions, but the moment I wrote down my distractions, I was like, okay, my phone, it could be WhatsApp, it could be, social media.
What's the biggest one that gets you?
It's social media. It's my phone, because my phone's constantly going off. So I'm like, James Clear talks about it in Atomic Habits. He's like, if you want to create a habit, he's like, you're going to have to make it as hard as possible or unattractive for you to break that bad habit. So what he means by that, he says, get your phone and put it in the other room.
Yes, make it less obvious.
Yes.
Or make one that you want more obvious.
Less attractive. Another one could be like if you want to stop eating or binge eating or emotionally eating, which a lot of people are doing right now in quarantine. Instead of having chips and stuff available on the table that you can see all the time, or chocolates, you can go put nuts or put some fruit out, or something healthy that you can see that you just go, I'll grab that. So I think it's really about going, okay, what is it that I want to focus on? Why do I want to focus on that? What will I get from me focusing on that? Because it's really important, I think, to know your why, because otherwise you just go, okay, I need to do this, but you don't really ask a deeper question.
Yeah. So do you think sometimes maybe they're trying to do something that's not of high value? Do you think that sometimes it falls within something that they're really not seeing as to the importance of how it benefits maybe their high values, or maybe something, or their why, and then maybe forgetting exactly why they started or why they're doing it?
Yeah. There's so many of us that will think I need to do this or I have to go and do this, but we don't really know why we're doing it. We're just kind of doing it because we should. We're told we should. Like, you should eat healthy, but why? Yeah. You should do certain exercises, but why? But I think really if people understand the benefits of what that's going to give them, then they're more inclined to go, okay, cool. I know if I get this done, like I'm pretty ambitious with what I want to create and stuff. So I know if I go, I'm going to create a plan and I want to get these things done, that's moving me closer to my dream. That's fun for me. So I think it's really important also to bring fun into it. Like with focus comes, we're so easily distracted. Like we pick up a phone, we get notifications. That's another thing, notifications. Like I don't have notifications on Instagram, Facebook. I have it on Instagram, but
that doesn't stop me from checking it though.
Yeah, but I put it on silent. And really when I want to focus, like to try and get really focused, like, and this is pretty hard for me, I'll admit, what I'll do is I'll set a timer for like 45 minutes. I'm going to fully just like smash out this task for 45 minutes and it comes like a game. So I do it 45 minutes and I work at it, and then the alarm will go off and I go, cool. And then I'll set up, but if I don't do that also, I get pulled in direction sometimes. Yeah. And it's frustrating. Like it can be super frustrating when you're like, I'm trying to do this thing and then you're not doing anything except going all over the joint.
Just being busy being busy. And I think that's one thing is like a lot of people are trying to be, they get down on themselves by not being effective within 2 hours or 3 hours or whatever. And it's because they've yet to master being super effective within 15 minutes. And again, it's chunking down. It's like, well, just prove to yourself that you can master and be very effective within 15 minutes. Mm-hmm. Once you've been able to prove that and show that, you just keep edging it out, right? But again, like people, they want to bypass that, and it's like they get really down on themselves as well, because it's some people can do a lot more in 15 minutes and some people with 2 hours.
True.
So then it's like, well, focus plus effectiveness in a sense. And I speak to a lot of people. It's like some people have 8 hours a day to focus on their business, and some people only have 15 minutes. And some people are going to do more in that 15 minutes than some will over the whole 8 hours. So again, it's also a thing about like trying to be as effective as you possibly can, but that also then goes back to being super organized, knowing exactly what it is you need to do. And I think some people can also get a little bit overwhelmed when they've got so many to-dos. So I like to sort of chunk it down where on a Sunday or so, I come up with, all the open loops that I need to knock on the head and all the action steps. And then my week basically gets compartmentalized into the only thing I have to do all week is this list. It's not I have to do a whole bunch of things.
So you do your week on a Sunday?
Well, I like to get clear on what am I going to be happy with by week's end if I fulfill.
Okay.
And sometimes they're like, I'm not going to get everything done. Yeah. But that creates the organization and it streamlines it into I only do one thing. I'm only doing one thing all week. And that gets broken down into how many workouts I've decided to do. Everything to do with my lifestyle, and I can just tick it off. The whole thing is then about ticking off. Am I as consistent with that as I should be? No, but this is the importance of being able to get organized on the Sunday. All I do is this. It's done. You can take an hour. It only takes an hour. And then the whole week ahead, you've already decided if I do this, I'm happy with the week. But I think again, like some people just, because they don't do that, they don't know what will make them, they don't know what sort of effort will have them be happy by week's end. If you've dictated that but at the beginning of the week, and you've said, this is what will make me happy, then if you get close to it, then at least you have some sort of gauge and organization as well. But let's take, so maybe what we'll do, let's say someone's building a business or they're building a side hustle or something to do with bolstering their career. Right? What do you see with people that are building a business as far as trying to remain focused and what are the big sort of distractions when it comes to their business? Because there's a whole bunch of things that people are trying to create right now. It's not just businesses, but
it's interesting, man, because I was listening to, again, James Clear and Sam Harris the other day. It was a podcast, and he was speaking about, everybody has dreams, everybody has big goals, but unless you have a plan, you're basically just stabbing in the dark. Now, how many of us do that? We get pumped up, we get motivated, and then we're like, yes, I'm going to go and do this. And then it falls on its face, because motivation can be a dangerous thing. I think motivation can be dangerous because the moment you rely on something outside of you to motivate you, the moment that's not there, then where's your motivation? So it has to be internal. And James Clear hit it on the head. I was walking down the street and I heard this, and I've heard it before, but it really hit me this time because of what I'm trying to create right now with my businesses. And he said, we don't rise to the level of our goals. We fall to the level of our systems. And when you think about that, it's everything is in your system. It's like, what do you do daily? What you do daily will affect your month. What you do monthly will affect your year. What you do yearly will affect your the next decade. You know, you've all heard of that. Be careful what you say, because your thoughts become words, words become actions, actions become character, character becomes your destiny. You know, and it's so true. It's like the things you do on a consistent basis daily, is this in alignment with the person I want to be? And how do I show up as that? So for people that are growing their business right now, it's like, cool, if this is the goal, what's the system I'm going to create in order to get that goal? Versus I'm just going to go and work for 14-hour days, standing in the dark, thinking, oh, I need this and I need that, with no actual system. And there's all success leaves clues. So if success leaves clues, there's so many people that are leaving clues out there to go, okay, cool. If you want to build your YouTube, or if you want to build your brand, this is how you do it. There's so much information out there, but it's just about going, okay, what is the system that's going to get me there? And being patient, because sometimes that's what happens.
What about shiny object syndrome? Because I think we're in an era and we're in a day and age where it's never been easy to succeed for just about anyone, right? But it's never been more difficult to stay focused because we're so aware of so many different people succeeding in so many different things. And for a lot of people, when the thing that they're doing gets a little bit tough and is not necessarily going as fast as they'd like it or happening as quick, they see all these other people and they look at that and go, well, it must be the thing that they're doing that's making them successful. It's what they're doing, as opposed to the fact that they're super clear on the fact that that's what they know they should be doing, right? I think that's what people kind of don't understand. It's not the things that make people successful, is the fact that they're super clear on the fact that that's what they should be doing. And when you're clear on that, you're not looking elsewhere. You're not saying, well, is this going to be better than what I'm doing? Is this going to lead me to success quicker? Because there's always going to be stuff out there, and we see it all the time. Oh, I just saw this person do well in stock trading. I just saw this person do well. A coach, I just saw this person do well in this type of business. I just saw this person do well in network marketing. I saw people do well in affiliate marketing. And then they chop and change. Yeah. And they confuse the fact that they've seen this person do well at that for it being the outlet. No, they were just super clear on the fact that that's the outlet that they needed to be in, and it suited their skills, it suited their values, it suited their desires, it suited their why, it suited their morals, it suited their business ethics, or whatever it is.
What happens when you change your mind consistently?
Well, you start to, I think that breeds doubt. I think the more things that you try to do and fail at, because you refuse to develop grit and you refuse to develop the characteristics. It might be that, but it could simply be you just lack clarity on what it is you should be doing, and you're trying to do something that's just not.
If you're constantly doing it and not following through and going, I don't like this today, let's go and do this. I don't like this today, let's go and do this. I don't like this today, let's go and do this. Like the shiny, it's like we're looking for instant gratification. What happens when we look for instant gratification? It's like, I'm not getting the hit that I want, or I think I'm going to get, because what I saw was not just the person that was successful. This person's been working their ass off for a certain amount of time. They've developed system, they've developed habits. And it's this typical thing, success doesn't happen overnight. When I see people pop up out of nowhere, it's like, they didn't just pop up. They were grinding in the background, but consistently.
Yeah, but people don't see that, right? No. So, and it's like people want it as quick as possible. And you do see people marketing things like, it took me so-and-so, but they didn't show, oh yeah, but the years of me developing this trait, this skill, this ability of whatever that, then when I moved into this, allowed me to be super effective. Some people are entering that thinking they should be able to spend the same amount of time being able to get there. And I think people do have a really unhealthy expectation of how long things should take to be able to get there, and how much focus it requires on one thing to eventually be able to get good at it. Yeah. So, and you can take you, for instance, like been doing what you're doing for 10 odd years, 10 plus years. And then, people might look at you now and go, oh, I've just realized Emile's on social media. He just popped up overnight. It's like, well, you haven't gone and sprayed off on a whole bunch of different things. You've stayed focused even amongst all the seeing other people do whatever it was that they're doing. You stayed in your lane. You stayed committed to the craft. You were clear on that's the thing that you were going to do, and you were going to burn the boats and make it work until you got there, right?
It's funny you say that, because stay in your lane. I think it's a massive thing we all need to do. It's like, what speaks to you? We're never competing against anybody else except for ourselves. And I think that's the dangerous part of it, is the comparison that we can do. It's like, I need to be as good as that person. Or that person's doing it, I should be doing that. And it's like, if you're constantly looking outside, you're actually just pushing off your gifts yourself that you have. You're not acknowledging the gifts that you have as well. I think we're all unique in our own way, and we have to understand what our strengths are. And when we all understand our individual strengths, then we focus on that. And when we can focus on that, we can take it to the next level and then adapt. Cool, that's what they're doing, but I'm not the same person. I'm not that person. How do I make it unique to me? And there's so many coaches out there. There's so many network marketers. There's so many things. What makes us different? And I think that's what we have to ask ourselves in order to get really clear about who we are as people. What are my values? Your values are different. But we both know that obviously with what we do, we have similar values, but it doesn't mean they're the same.
No, and we'll talk about that, but I want to put a full stop on that question of being able to focus, and we'll stop it at that. But I do want to go into what you're talking about now with sort of a comparison of values and how that affects people over the long term, right? Because we do see that I think people do borrow other people's value systems, and sometimes even they borrow people's whys because they've seen them get appreciation for what their why is. I know I've seen people who have seen that, they had this why of retiring their mother, and we get appreciation for that. And then people say the same thing, but it was really truly ingrained that that's what we wanted to do. It wasn't borrowed from anyone else. It wasn't something that we thought was sounding good to people on the way to getting it. That was the thing that got us there, was the fact that our why was super clear. It actually was what it was. Yeah. And it was palpable. It wasn't just a gimmick, right? And I think that a lot of people do borrow a lot of people's whys, or they borrow people's value systems, because sometimes they just simply want the appreciation of whatever it is that they've seen people get for things that they actually really truly don't value. And when I say to people, look, if I don't see a change in behavior towards what you want, I'm telling you right now, you haven't found your why. I'm telling you right now.
It's also, you think like, that person looks really happy. I want what that person has. It's a gap. The gap is like, you're looking at that person going, oh my God, that person must be so fucking happy. That person just got this award. That person just showed up in this. Look at the appreciation. Look at the love they're getting. The whole thing even about famous. It's like, we think fame is going to give us this, I'm going to feel complete when I get famous. And then some of these people are the most loneliest people ever, because they were lonely from the start. It's just exuded. It's just put a magnifying glass on what was there before.
Yeah, society has a really big issue with that. Is they think that there's this hierarchy that's unspoken of, but it's very prevalent. It's like, who gets to feel what? And a lot of people think people who are famous, or who had success, or have gained some sort of level of esteem or social status, or a financial status, that they get to escape the realms of being a human, right? So we see it when celebrities have success and whatever, and it's like they have the issues of, what's he got to be upset about? Like, it's like they don't, once you reach this, like, you're not allowed to feel no more pain, right? Because people think that they're going to be able to, when they get to that point, I'm going to get there. I'm going to get it. I'm never going to feel sad again. I'm never going to feel lonely again. I'm never going to feel these things again. And they have this false expectation around that. Yeah. And we see it with how people treat celebrity or people that have success. They don't allow them to be human, because they think they've been able to escape the realms of feeling the exact same things. It's like, it's messed up.
It's funny you say, because it's pedestal, right? We put people on pedestals. And whenever we put people on pedestals, I've done it before. Like I had a teacher that I had, oh my God, he was one of the best yoga teachers I've ever had. He had so much knowledge. I put him on this pedestal. Like he knew so much. But the dangerous thing about putting someone on a pedestal is whether it's even a girlfriend or a boyfriend or your husband or wife, your guru, is that you don't give them room to make a mistake. You don't give that person, that famous person, room to make a mistake. And the moment they make a mistake, we condemn them. We're like, oh my God, I can't believe they did that. And this is the thing. It's like there is a massive gap. The moment you put someone on a pedestal, they have to be perfect. We create this illusion in our own minds that they have to show up like this. Our expectations.
Yeah,
how they have to show up.
You've got this. You don't get to experience humanness anymore, right? That's a really we have a nobility issue within society, I feel. But also, again, people need to know that if someone's human, even if they're showing it, even if people are posting the highlight reels, they're going to have stuff there. Like, I don't need someone to show me their pain to know that they got it. If I know that they're human, I don't need you to go and show me it. I just know. But I think some people get the idea that they don't. And I think DeMartini uses a really good sort of example of values comparisons. It's like there's a trade-off, but people just aren't aware of the trade-off that person's made. And again, he uses a story where he talks about he was talking to a doctor, and this doctor was really, really miserable, really upset, hating life, and he's talking to him about what's going on for him. And he asks him, "Who are you comparing yourself to?" And he says, "No one. I'm not comparing myself to no one." He's like, "No, have a good think about it. Have a good think about it." So he sits for a minute and he goes and starts to think, and he realizes, oh well, maybe there's this other doctor. And he goes, well, tell me about him. And well, before we talk about him, tell me about all the things that you value and the things that you think you're doing well in life. And he goes, I've got a great relationship with my partner. I've got a practice, I've got a couple of cars. I've got a great relationship with my kids. Even my stepmother, I've got a great relationship with. I can travel a few times a year, and but I still feel miserable. And he goes, well, talk about the guy that you're comparing yourself with. He goes, well, he's got 4 cars, and he's got 3 practices, and he's really well acclaimed, very famous, and he lives up on the hill in a bigger house. And he goes, well, let's say that you were able to have those 3 cars, more practices, a bigger house, and more notoriety. If you got those things, but you now had no good relationship with your wife and kids, you weren't able to travel as much, right? All the things would you trade with him? And he said, well, no. And he goes, well, where are you thriving within your values that maybe he's had to trade off with? He goes, well, he's split up from his wife and partner because he's too busy. He can't travel. His kids don't get to see him at all. And it's like, well, tell me now again, would you trade? But it's so easy to see on the front end, right? What's going well with people. It's like, but there's always a trade-off. And it's like typically people that live within their values, they get what they want. The high values, they typically get what they want, but they've had to sacrifice. And that's the trouble when people compare what their actual real high values are to someone else's. It makes it feel like they've got very little.
Yeah, it's such a dangerous thing to do. I mean, we've all heard the saying, comparison is the thief of joy. But we naturally do it. We do it unconsciously. We look. We've been brought up to compete, even from school. I think I was talking about this the other day. You go to school, you compete for grades. You race, you compete for that. You play sport, you compete for that. It's like the whole thing is when you win, you get praise. When you're at the top, you feel good, and so many athletes out there have their rituals, right? They literally have it's like an OCD thing. You've seen Nadal play tennis. He literally he sits his water bottle here, he sits his next drink here, sits that there. He's like, everything is same routine. And a lot of athletes do this because they know that works for them. But what happens when there's chaos and there's order? When it happens and it doesn't go in that, do they lose their shit? What happens if they can't play tennis? What happens if you can't do the thing that has always given you that adrenaline kick, that feeling of like, I feel alive? It's like, this is why it can be dangerous too.
Yeah. I mean, we compare both ways. We compare down to minimize.
Yeah.
Right. And I think that kind of, I think that kind of thing, minimizing kind of leads way into the next question, which is from our friend Tony Alexis.
Tony Alexis.
When does being positive become unhealthy? So basically, like, is being positive all the time good for you in a sense?
It's interesting, man, because I think the biggest myth in spirituality is that we have to just be positive. Just stay positive.
High vibe. Not low vibe. High vibe. Don't piss no one off. Don't get angry. Be upbeat.
I'm thinking about it. I'm like, I get it. And I also like to be positive, but I also have to acknowledge, like, this is what happens, right? Be positive all the time, but what you do is you deny certain parts of you. And I think we all have certain parts. We're naturally negatively geared to have negative thoughts, feelings and emotions that will come up. And if you resist them, what you resist will persist. The moment you try, it comes up, and the moment you try and push it down, the moment it gets louder. Now, so many of us are like, just be positive, just be positive. And I'm like, yeah, that's all good to say, all good and well. But it's like, I think it really does come down to acknowledging what's actually coming up and not focusing on it, like, and being like, oh, I'm negative, I'm negative, I'm negative, I'm negative. Like, because so many people have shame around that too. Like, how many of us, like, I shouldn't be feeling like this. I've got a place to live in. I've got this and that. And it's like, why am I feeling like that? Yeah,
well, there's people that have got less than me. I shouldn't be like this. Be upbeat, and they start focusing on like what's going right.
Yeah, and I think it's dangerous, especially now. Like, you think about people around the world. It's like, yeah, I get that. I get the grateful messages. People are in isolation and different things, and it's like, yeah, I get some people in Africa or some people in India. They have less, but you shouldn't also just push your feelings aside. I think that's also dangerous. If you don't acknowledge something, it'll get louder. If you keep suppressing it, it will get louder.
So it turns into repression.
Yeah, because the moment you resist it, it's like you're denying a part of yourself. Like, you're actually feeling that. Cool, I'm noticing I'm feeling that. Sometimes we need to go, fuck, I'm actually feeling that, but there's a reason why I'm feeling that. And maybe I've never been in this situation before. And a lot of us haven't been in this situation before. So it's like, have you been taught how to feel like this in a pandemic? Do you know how to be positive during a pandemic?
Well, we did apparently get warned about this a number of years ago.
5 steps for being positive during a pandemic. It's not going to happen. Like, what happens is right now, there's a shift going around the world. There's a reaction that happens. We react when our worlds change. We react from past wounding. If you haven't dealt with your past wounding, if you don't understand your past wounds, then guess what? Things are going to come up for me. Fear, anxiety, scarcity, lack. Like, we watch the news and that's the thing. It's like, I think we have to start acknowledging and go, you know what? Everybody's trying to do their best right now. How can we understand each other more? How can we seek to understand? Instead of going, no, you should be like this, or you should be like this, or you should act like this. Like, there's so many people, opinion, like, giving it to people. You're affecting my this, because they're coming from reaction. They're coming from fear.
Yeah.
So what do? It's like, I'm going to fling it on you, and then you can come back and take it personally. Like, who the hell are you to tell me how to feel? And you're not social distancing enough, and you're not doing that. People are getting in fights. Besides toilet paper.
Well, that's what happens when the repression comes in. Is that it then manifests in unhealthy ways. When it starts to stack up and you don't voice it in a healthy way, and then you think you're being positive on the front end, but then it comes back to bite you later on, because it just gets dun, 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 dun. And that's the scary thing, is like, I think someone said to me, I was like, oh, you always seem really positive, and I was like mortified by that.
You're like, I am negative.
You don't know me that well.
I am dark inside.
But also, it doesn't mean that you're not a positive person if you frustrate or annoy or piss people off, right? We have to, like, when did high vibe or being positive mean that you don't, rub people the wrong way? It's like, can you only be high vibe if you give over your values?
Or if you react. If you respond and act in a pleasant way.
Well, there's a big difference between responding and reacting.
Yeah.
Right? But it's like, are you really high vibe if you give her your values just to not piss someone off?
It's funny,
Not really.
Because you do this really well. I'm not so good at it.
What's that?
You'll speak up and just be like, boom, that's not happening. And like, just be like, no, straight away, right?
Yeah.
I, on the other hand, have been brought up not to, exactly what you're saying. I would take me a lot, like a kettle. And then bang, and then I'll burst, and then I'll like feel regret and shame after that. Whereas you're definitely like, you've been raised in a different way where you've actually shown up in that space of like, this is what it is.
Well, it's a war zone where I grew up.
Yeah.
It's like everyone had their opinion, and it was like everyone wanted to be hurt, and it's like and that's why the women in my family are very, 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 very strong-minded women. It's just like we went at it.
Yeah.
But it's not even, I think we need to frame, I think people are looking for positive, but I don't think positive is what we're looking for. I think we're trying to find what's useful. I think useful thinking is what we need to be focusing on. And that's why some people come to me and they're like, well, this person that I respect said this, and this person I respect said this. And there were two opposite opinions on the same topic, and now they're left in this limbo of like, I've got two people who I really respect, and which one is right, which one is, and it's like, well, they're both sharing they're useful, right? So I think we need to be on a search for what is useful, and sometimes what's useful is being allowing ourselves to feel what we need to feel. And not judging it. And that's another thing that I kind of have a gripe with some of the motivational accounts, is that, for one, they play it safe, and I don't have a lot of, I don't like that in a sense, where it's very nice things. It's like it's meant for people to like it. It's positive. Never running the risk of rubbing anyone the wrong way, right? And I just kind of think that sharing things that people are going to like and make them feel good allows to keep them in the game. Sharing things that might trigger them but are useful, that are sometimes hard to hear, is what improves them within the game. They're both just as needed. One, yes, positive, keeps you in the game. The other makes you better within it. And for me personally, the route that I've gone is, reality is more reassuring than reassurance itself. And I think while reality is sometimes really tough, I think it's more useful to find strength within reality as opposed to living in a world of delusion, because it's positive and allows me to feel good momentarily. I don't want life to get easier. I want to get stronger within it.
And I think that's what it is. It's like we learn self-development so that we can actually learn how to deal with our thoughts, our feelings, our emotions. We learn how to become more effective by doing the work. And somebody asked me this the other day. They're like, Emile, but I'm still experiencing insecurities. I'm still experiencing fears. Like, I thought I've done this work. I shouldn't be feeling like, and then you get upset about feeling that, and it's like it's never going to go away.
You just get better at it.
Yeah,
you get the frequency doesn't necessarily stop. And this is, in my opinion, as someone that struggled with the depression at one point. It's like the frequency of stuff showing up doesn't necessarily, but your ability to attend to it, or grow your less judgment towards it, or less shame around it, or a wrongness around it, or a negative around it, as opposed to like an observant sort of viewpoint as to everything I've experienced, whether negative, positive, how has it been useful? And I think, again, everyone's waiting for this time where life just gets simpler. It's like, no, you get stronger, but on the way to getting stronger, sometimes things are going to have to feel like shit. And that's the positive. It's like you can't live in this delusional world of positivity all the time, and it's not healthy. Like it's like you say, the repression then turns into what you think you're doing is positive on the front end ends up coming and rearing its head down the track later on.
It's actually when you are actually the most disconnected and lonely.
Yeah.
It's when you're denying yourself actually what's actually happening. This is when you're like, you will feel the most disconnected. Because this is the thing, we're both made up of dark and light. Yeah, great. Light is amazing. Dark is actually where you're going to transform your shit. And when you go through your shit, you're literally going to ask yourself, you should ask yourself, what did I learn from this circumstance? What did I learn from that particular experience? And no matter how painful it is, there's always lessons in it. So when you ask a question like, what did I learn from that? You go, well, I learned not to be treated a certain way. I learned to stand up for myself. I learned that me speaking out, I do have a voice. Like there's so many things like where people are like, ooh, I don't want to rattle that because that's uncomfortable.
That's where their work is, right? It's like if you want to have integration and you want to be a fully expressed version of yourself, it also means like the integration of the shadow where, you know, some people don't want to be a bitch or what they coin as a bitch. Some people don't want to be this or that or be an asshole. And integration is understanding that you're every single trait that is human possibly to be had, and everyone shares in every single one. And to know that every opposite has something else and resides within you, right? So that's why sometimes when it comes to, you know, people talk about authenticity being a positive thing. Well, it's also saying, you know what? 50% of people think I'm one of the greatest people that they know. 50% also think I'm an asshole, and they're all correct because I am everything under the sun at any given point in time. And I don't think that means that I'm a negative person, but to some people I might be perceived as that. But again, what would be worse? Repression. So where's the trade-off?
And disconnection. It is. It comes back to, here's one for you. Spiritual bypassing.
So I think that was that a question?
But that question was the question you asked was, is positivity toxic? And it does go back into spiritual bypassing of like, you know, everything happens for a reason, and you know, I saw a sign, and you know, and I get that everything does happen for a reason, but it's also, don't disconnect what just happened. Like, let's be real about it. Like, that happened, it hurt. I need to speak up about this, or I need to connect in. Like,
I'm not all light and love.
Yeah.
Like someone trying to say, like, I never want to position myself as all light and love. I see that as one of the most dangerous places that anyone can position themselves, because people are going to hold you to that standard, right? And I think like with our relationship with Joe, like I think we've got a good one, and it's quite like within the typical realms of male relationships. Like if I'm flat, I just say, oh fuck, I'm just feeling flat. And you guys could go, oh, why? I don't know.
Yeah.
And I don't think that I need to be upbeat Ben all the time for people to be accepting of me or whatever. If you guys came to me and it's like, I'm feeling flat, it's like, yeah, you're a human being. Like you're not going to be uppity all the time. Like that's false expectations that I'm going to be thrust onto you, right? But that means that I've done that to myself first. Again, we've spoken about that before, right? And I think people just have really unfair expectations around how positive they are. They're meant to be all the time. And
if they're not positive, then people, like, we hear it all the saying, like all the time, going, if there's negative people around you, just get rid of them. And I think it can be dangerous. It's like all of a sudden you start looking for people anyone that's being negative, you're like, you're just negative. Like I get you can have that negative Nancy in the room that's always like, everything you say, they're like, yeah, but this is happening, and they can drain your life. I get that. But there is a difference between like you looking for it, like, and not actually acknowledging it. That's a big difference. There's a massive difference. Every time you literally are around people and you're like, yeah, see, they're not my people. They're not vibing with me the way I want to vibe because I'm a high viber. That's also dangerous because there's a gap there. The gap of judgment of going, I've already learnt this. And I say this to my students as well when they leave our retreats and they leave our events. I say to them, I'm like, you're going to go home. You just learn a whole bunch of new stuff. Guess what? You're also going to judge people for not being where you're at.
Yeah. That grandiosity.
That's dangerous.
That mask shame. That grandiosity a lot of time is the mask shame.
Because originally they were coming to me, or they're coming to the event, or they're coming to this because they've wanted acceptance their whole life. Then you finally accept yourself. Now you accept myself. Now it's you guys that need the work.
You're fucked.
You guys should go and do self-development.
It's not me. It's just everyone around me.
Or the whole classic saying, I need my boyfriend to do this. I need my girlfriend to do this. They really need to learn this. No, you need to accept where they're at and be with them during that space.
That shows up a lot in relationships. I think that's a whole other. That could be a topic. That's a whole one altogether. Whole podcast altogether. So I think the next one. Do good men exist? So there's just so much to that.
That was by Beat.
Beats with the Z _EK on Instagram. You sent this one through, so thank you so much for doing that. Do good men exist? Emile, do they, or are all of us assholes?
Jeez,
Complete assholes.
I think it's an interesting question because it's so wide. Do good men exist? Of course, good men exist, but
do you want good men to exist?
Yeah, it's what is your belief behind that? Because if I've been hurt, maybe it's my father. Maybe it's your father. Her name's Beta. Beta. Maybe it's your father that you don't have a good relationship with. Maybe it's a boyfriend that left you or was really awful to you, and then you've had a few of those boyfriends, and it started from somewhere, and everything's a pattern. So maybe your belief now is that there's no good men out there. So now if that's your belief, then what's going to happen is that you're constantly going to look for faults in men because something burned you a long time ago. And this is what we can do as human beings is like we have an experience and then we name that experience and we agree that that's it. Because if I agree that that's my truth, then I'm going to avoid getting hurt again. I don't want to feel that pain. So what happens? We go around and we look for people and deep down we want to be loved, but deep down there's something that has not been healed yet. And then we go outside and we point and we say, it's like a generalization. Do good men exist? Of course there's good men out there. Of course there's men that love themselves. Of course there's men that can emotionally express. But if we are constantly labeling and generalizing and putting the whole thing, it's like, it's not fair. It's not fair to you. Because you're going to literally always get what you look for. Yeah.
Well, that narrative is just going to continually play out. And it can fall back onto like unhealthy expectations as well. But again, we Beats _EK. Again, like there's so many variables that go into, your personal experience. So we don't know it personally, but for a lot of women, sometimes they've had, the narrative is that their mother has been the hero archetype. And it's sometimes, and this is the scary thing about sometimes when people talk shit about their spouse in a breakup and when there's a kid involved, is the narrative becomes that my mum said all men are the same. No men are good. And because your mum carries the hero archetype and you look up to him so much, having that be disproved destroys a little bit of the hero archetype that your mother wasn't right in a sense, right? So it's like my hero in my life has said that there's no good men. I need to fulfill that out so they're right on that topic. For them to be not right on that topic would be too hard to realize that maybe they weren't right on that. So women will some, and again, it's some given certain circumstances, want to play that narrative out because it supports the hero archetype of which they built around their mother. They don't actually want to find a good man because it contradicts that.
contradicts belief. And if I do find a good man, then what's the story? We always get something from our story.
Well, the story wasn't right, and that aspect around what I was led to believe wasn't true. But that also then can affect some men.
Oh yeah.
In a sense, where my parents had split up, but my mother never talked shit about my dad, right?
Never.
No, she didn't. She was really good in that sense where she just didn't really talk much about anything. And we became aware over time maybe there was some things that maybe were not admirable at all, right? And eventually like that, and I think in a small sense, and there's no blame, like my mum didn't do this for me. It's like I adopted it from just what I've kind of realized was that sometimes when the narrative has been you're a son and your mum's the hero archetype, and she is to me.
Yeah.
And you then worry that you're going to fuck someone over like you felt like maybe your mum was. And you live in this perpetual state of not being fearful of you getting hurt, but you're the one that's going to do the hurting.
So what I'm hearing is you're saying like, if you have a story about your father, which is not good, right? Because
it's not that anymore, but at one point it might have been that.
Yeah. Then what's the fear?
Well, it turns into, well, I don't want to manifest that again. I don't want, like, am I going to be just as bad? And then the fear turns into not trying to find a good woman. It's like not ending up being someone that hurts a good woman.
Yeah.
Right. So then I get scared.
But like, deep down, it's like I have a fear that I want to turn out like my dad. And I hear it so many times. I don't want to turn out like my dad. I don't want to turn out like my mum. My God, if I turn out like my mum, that would be the worst. And that's where the healing is. That's the funny thing.
Yeah. And it's like, it's all unconscious. Like, this is the thing. Like, I got so many great traits from my dad. And it's not so much like not wanting to be like my dad. It's more like some of the things that maybe played out when you're young and you don't have, and I've done a lot of work around it. So I love my dad. My dad's, he's a good man. Like, I appreciate everything he's been able to do and everything. So I don't have a bad sort of viewpoint towards him. I've done a lot of work around that. But I think, for a long time, for men that have been afraid of that, they've spent their whole life trying to prove that not right. Then I've looked at it myself as like, again, I was single for such a long time, and maybe one of the big things was like, I'm more concerned about hurting someone than being hurt myself.
Yeah.
Because it's like, well, men have been known to do this. And it's like now, but the fear becomes, am I going to just continue on the same flow of wounding? Because he didn't do things or whatever out of nowhere. He got them from somewhere else, right?
Yeah.
And understanding that he's not to blame. I don't blame him in the slightest for that. But then when it's you, it's a lot harder to allow yourself that affordability, right? So again, it's like, can we trust? Like, I was just like, can I trust myself to be better? And then for some women, it's like, I don't actually want to find a good man because it just doesn't fit the narrative. It doesn't fit the narrative. So, but there are good men out there. But again, you're not going to find a man that's everything that you can write if you're going to write a massive list of the things you want in a man, you're going to have to write a whole list next to it of the polar opposites, because they're going to display some of that in some retrospect, in hopefully in a lot of small doses. But there's definitely,
I mean, it's also going, well, if I want a good man, it's going to be kind, generous, compassionate, open-minded, thoughtful. It's like, am I showing up like that? It's like, you want this, but how are you showing up like that? And that's what I'm saying. It's like, I want a man that's accepting, but I'm not being accepting because I'm like judging every man for his fault, right? So it's like we mirror shit. And this is why we need to be really conscious. And I can't believe I just said that word, but conscious of our own thought pattern and how we point, because when we are pointing, there's three fingers pointing back. It's like, if everything's wrong with them, how am I showing up? I'm showing up as judgmental then. So what's the healing I need to do then? If I can't find a good man, it's like, where do I not accept parts of myself? Where did I reject myself? And like I said, it comes back to there must have been something that happened. Either it was your father, it was your grandfather, it was a male figure that disappointed you. And then from that disappointment, you decided that it's the same. Yeah, they're all the same.
And you want that to, you valued that being the case more than it actually finding a good man.
And I feel like what she actually needs is deep, like, acceptance, deep love for herself. And from that part, like, check into, like, what are the things you've been denying about yourself? What are the things that you haven't allowed people to see? What are the things you're ashamed about? Because that's where she's going to get, I reckon, her healing. Then she can go out and go, okay, cool, I'm open to that. And it's going to be scary. Like, there's so many, like, I've coached so many clients where they're like, okay, I'm ready to find my man now. And that's scary for people. It's scary to be vulnerable. It's scary to show up and go, hey, my heart's open this time. Because there's risk. There's risk of rejection. There's risk of getting disappointed again. There's risk of, like, your expectations on someone else going, I want you to show up like this. And if you don't show up like that, that's going to trigger that pain spot.
Yeah. And I think it's just, it can be safe to, like, and I know for me, sometimes when stuff gets a little bit difficult, it's like, it's like you just go to look to find, like, your escape route. It's like, where can I find all your flaws? I'm going to focus on them. They're going to give me enough to validate not having you in my life anymore, because I don't want to have to go through this level of growth, right? And it's like, I've seen myself in my head do that and have to really go, you're doing it again.
We're so good at it.
You're doing it again, man.
I heard this once, the moment you start judging it or judging the person, that's giving you permission to separate. Because if I can separate, I say, you're doing this, you're doing that, you're showing up like this.
It's easy to go, it's your fault.
It's easy to point.
Why'd you break up? Well, he was a fucking...
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Well, they were.
And you start looking at, I'm the same. I was so good at finding defaults. Yeah, she's like this and she does this and I don't like the way she does that. And then my mind will go off and have a little story and keep playing it and replaying it. And it's like this movie going on.
And I think Disney, I think media and Disney has, like, completely fucked up everyone's perspective of, like, how relationships would be. It's like this unicorn that everyone's waiting for, where it's like, it's just, like, amazing all the time. It's like, you're going to be waiting a long time. You're going to be waiting a long ass time.
Wait, before you go on, there was a quote I read the other day. And the quote was, do not expect your relationship to always be perfect and fun. The deepest unions certainly have space for joy and excitement, but they also have space for vulnerability and healing. When growing in self-awareness, there will be times when one or both feel agitated because they have come into contact with old hurt. A couple that welcomes inner growth will experience an expansion of their perspectives, start to let go of their past, practice consistent honesty, and cultivate the skill of being aware of their own tension so that they do not project it onto their partner and cause uncertainty and unnecessary conflict. It is natural for things to feel shaky right before there is a shift into greater harmony. Real love blossoms when both know themselves better as individuals. And that, like, that was by young Pablo. He's a poet, but it's you think about it, it's like you want to find the perfect person, but it's like there's no such thing. It's an illusion.
Yeah.
So what's the anecdote is acceptance. Where am I not accepting myself? Where am I not accepting parts of me? And where do I want that more from outside than to go inside and accept me?
Yeah.
So to your question, yes, there is good men out there.
Yeah. And maybe genuinely you are just having a bad run of luck where you just are, not men that are just not your style.
Yeah.
Okay, so next question is, could you go without your phone for a day?
Ben.
Look, so many people who would know me, and there's no way I'd be able to go and take any sort of good way of making myself look in this situation, because my girlfriend would call me out completely immediately. But Look, I have an issue with checking my phone a hell of a lot. My business is on my phone, but I can use that as like a bit of an excuse. Like I know that I have a crux, and
look how you're crossing your arms.
I know. I'm just like I'm getting defensive in my body because I feel like I'm on trial right now. Yeah. Look, I think I definitely could, but that's not to say that I don't have an issue with maybe being on my phone more than I should. So I could. I definitely would have moments where I'd go to find it or go to reach for it, and then maybe experience some withdrawal symptoms. But that is not to assume that I don't have use my phone as a bit of a medicator or a bit of a distraction. That's probably one of my biggest things that I'd say myself and my girlfriend would say that I need to work on.
Could I go without my phone for a day? I could. It happened actually the other day. Well, I had my phone, but I didn't have internet. So remember there was Nyepi here?
Yeah.
So there's this holiday called Nyepi in Bali. And what it is it's called the Day of Silence because they say that the evil spirits fly over the island. So the whole island shuts down for 24 hours and you can't leave your villa. You can't go anywhere. And did you have internet?
It popped back up, I think around 9 at night or something like that. Yes. But then it was at serotonin. It's like, oh my God,
yeah,
I'm back on.
That's what I'm saying. I had no internet for 24 hours. And I remember saying to my mum, I was like, Mum, I'm not going to have internet. So just if you call me and you're freaking out because of what was going on with Corona, just let you know. Told my girlfriend, that was it. And then the whole day, I didn't have any internet. And I was like, at the start, I was like devastated. Like fully devastated, like what the hell am I going to do? I'm in this villa by myself. And then it actually became one of the I had the most connected, fun day I've had in a long time. Like I read books that I wouldn't normally be reading. Yeah. I sat in the sun. I listened to audiobooks. I cooked. I made a big bone broth that day, big pot of bone broth. It was just super interesting. I did meditation. I meditated twice that day. I watched the sunset. It was insane. And I think when I said that, I was like, I'm going to do this all the time. Have I done it? Nope. But I think it's really good for us to have breaks with our phone. And like, for example, like even with the gym, like I have the phone with me at the gym. And if I don't have my routine at the gym, I'll end up checking it or responding to messages. So I think it's really good sometimes not to have your phone in the gym or have parts where it's like you don't have it with you, because we have it with us, like probably have a break from it, maybe an hour a day, I reckon, if you're lucky.
Yeah, I think it's one of those ones where it's like, and for me, it's been one of the hardest habits and still is right at this moment. But again, making that habit less accessible, less accessible, leaving it home, leaving it in the bike, leaving it, not having it next to your bed. I mean, that's still something. I mean, I have a bad habit of waking up and checking my phone pretty much straight away. Like that's probably not the best thing. Well, it's definitely not the best thing to start off the day with.
I turn my phone off and I have my iPad there. So then I do my morning routine and wake up and then I turn it on after. But then I still do get tempted.
Yeah.
I'll be like, ooh, I just checked that.
Yeah. So we could, and for myself, it's definitely something that I struggle with. So, okay. So last question for today. Which one is it? What are your morning rituals? So from the moment you wake up.
So mine right now, I'm actually working on this with my coach right now. So I'm just like, I've had so many different morning rituals, and I believe you should have a morning routine and a night routine. What I would like to include and what I'm creating a habit out of right now is waking up, meditating, either listening to an audiobook, and then heading to a gym. And then I have either a green juice, which is like this green powder, the superfoods, and then I wait a bit and then I have my bone broth. And then I go and train. because I need to move my energy. And that's working really well for me right now. I think the moment I get pulled in, if I don't have a morning routine, I would go on Instagram, and you can waste so much time. I have a timer on it on Instagram that says 45 minutes, and then it goes off, you've been on this for 45 minutes. So I really, really try to make effort not to go on Instagram straight away or anything like that. That's just going to allow me to just scroll unconsciously through a whole bunch of stuff, because then that also takes my energy on what I'm going to create that day. So meditation is a big thing, because the moment you meditate also, or even journal in the morning, like I don't journal in the morning, I try to journal more at nighttime. But meditating in the morning just to breathe and like center yourself, then listening to an audiobook versus listening to something that you're watching on the news. Like we react instantly. Our bodies are absorbing it instantly. And if you're not careful, especially with that kind of stuff, it would just automatically download. And then all of a sudden that's the day you're going to have. Yeah. So I think it's really important. Like your first hour of the day is your hour of power. And I try to make it my 2 hours, because go to the gym. And then I also have just incorporated going to the spa and sauna after gym. And then after I finish gym, spa, sauna, I'll do the ice bath, sauna, and I'll also do a mantra. So before I even leave the house, I'll do my mantras, and I look in the mirror and repeat. And then even when I'm at the ice bath, when I'm 5 degrees, I'm literally repeating my mantra. And I literally have to, it's like my focus. It's like you're doing this because you're putting into your own cup. You're doing this because you're focusing. And sometimes I'm like, I hate the ice bath, but I'm like, you're doing this because you're strengthening your mindset, you know? And that's the part that like gets you to push through uncomfortable things, because it's such an intense, painful feeling. Like when you're at 5 degrees, it's like my feet are hurting, and I'm like, okay, I'm noticing my feet are hurting. And then you breathe through that and it moves. And you're like, my elbows are hurting. And then you're like, and it's true. Whatever you focus on will grow. So if you focus on the pain that you're in when I was in the ice bath, then that's what comes up louder and louder. But I literally am focusing on my breath, coming back to my breath. Then my mind goes straight to the pain, and then I go, come back to the breath. Back and forth. And then you hop out, and then I walk on the grass. So I ground, get some sun, and then, it's my mornings. What's your mornings like?
So lately I've been getting up a bit earlier than I usually would. But it's good. I'm waking up pretty much, like my circadian rhythm is pretty good. I'm waking up pretty much when the sun's coming up.
What time are you going to bed?
It depends. It depends. Sometimes I like to wind down my brain, and sometimes I like to watch stuff that doesn't take a lot of mental capacity, like dumb shit on Netflix, right? So sometimes if it's like a series, like I just got through a whole series, like occasionally I'd be up until 2, but that's rare. Typically getting into bed around, at the moment, I'd say I'm probably falling asleep between 10 and 11 at the moment. Waking up at about 6, just after 6. Last couple of days I've done yoga at 7. So either I'm doing yoga or exercising.
Which I can't believe, by the way.
Well, the funny thing is like I was doing a lot of yoga when I was back in Perth before I moved out to Bali. I was doing a lot of hot yoga. And then I moved to Bali, and then I just stopped doing it, which you think is backwards. You come to Bali, you start doing more yoga. Like, no.
I'm the same. I used to teach. I used to be a teacher.
Yeah.
I got to Bali and I stopped doing yoga altogether. It's weird.
So one of the things I'm trying to improve is my mobility. So focusing on that aspect a bit more. But typically it's a blend of yoga or boxing or weights morning time. I wake up, I have water, I have my capsules, my telomere capsules, and then I have
to keep you looking young.
Just for for the long term.
Ben thinks that if he keeps taking these telomere capsules, that he's going to look like my age when.
Oh, look, there's a lot of things that are going to age a lot of people really quick, and I like to focus on some good longevity practices and rituals. So that's one of them. I have my adaptogen tonic. They're my 2 things that are every day. With water, have a coffee, espresso, maybe long black, iced long black, maybe. Typically those three are my go-tos. Go train, then I go for a walk after train with my girlfriend, and then I break my. Typically, I'm fasting at the moment. I'm doing 16 hour, trying that out, but I'm also doing a prolonged fast during the week, once or twice a week, once a week or once every 2 weeks. But I'm typically having about a 16-hour window right now where I'm not eating. So I break that with a smoothie. And then by the time that's done, then I start to sort of enter into my work around about 10:30, 11, 12, depending. And again, it depends on what happens. If I have a dinner the night before, I stretch it back out and move my training out a bit more, so I'm not eating too far after that. So it all depends. It fluctuates. But the main things are I'm waking up, having my tonic, having my capsules, having water, then, maybe my coffee, movement, exercise, walk. And then basically once I've done all that, then I enter into everything else.
Work. Yeah.
Cool. All right, guys. Well, thanks so much for your questions. I hope you've enjoyed all of this. And next time we just keep an eye out. We like to hit people up over our social medias to be able to give us some questions. So we're loving them. Keep them coming in, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks, guys. Peace.